Generosity and service are key in my life. My lens is probably more of one that I would use the word stewardship, and to me, stewardship is a mentality that I don't have, I don't own, but I've been entitled and trusted to manage some of God's time and money. So when I think about the idea of generosity, I have to be careful, because when I start thinking I'm too generous, it's almost backwards. It's almost a pride, an entitlement that I have something that I've earned to give away. And I really like to think about it more from the stewardship of what God's given me and entrusted with me, and how can I best utilize, maximize, and reinvest those resources that He's entrusted me with. The idea of being generous and serving was instilled in me from a very young age. My father not only preached it, but also modeled it in that kind of the 10% model of 10% of your money off the top, 10% of your time off the top being reinvested back into the kingdom. And it's been an interesting journey, as it was instilled so deeply that I just took it as truth. And very early on in my marriage, we were put to the test. It's one of the few places that God says, test me, and we did, and we were dirt poor. We continued to tithe on the small amount of income that we were making, and to watch God show up and honor that in very small ways that at the time, you know, you just break down and bawl in tears, because that could only be God. That was really powerful for us as a young couple, newly married. And so we've carried that on in our marriage, and said that was the God that, you know, brought us out of the desert as we trusted Him, and no way are we going to look back. We're going to keep not only doing what we did, but try and push that bar a little further and a little further as we continue down our marriage. The way that we've grown in our mentality of generosity and giving is a lot around the idea of the abundance of God. And I think that I grew up almost with a mentality that there are very limited resources, and so I'm lucky to get what I get and hold on to those tightly. And the more I experience, the more I see God at work, the more I see His abundance and the Father that wants to just lavishly pour on and give to His children as they ask and as they're responsible with what they're given. I have a 5-year-old son right now, and I'm constantly amazed at how much I want to spoil him. I never thought that would be my mentality or my spirit, but I want to spoil this child out of my love for him. And I know that it's irresponsible to do that too much, but I use that as a great parallel to how God's got to be thinking about me, and just, wow, He loves me so much, and He wants to pour out His unlimited riches upon my wife, my family, my life. But He's going to do so in a way that's responsible, that I'm not going to be able to mess that up too much. And so I just try and take it day by day to give as much that I possibly can. And the biggest, I'd say secondarily, the other way that we've seen a lot of growth in the idea of generosity is simply being present. We're in a culture that demands our attention on 50,000 messages a day. We've got emails, Facebook, Twitter, all of it's bombarding us, our phone's ringing. As soon as we walk in the home, we turn on the television for absolutely no reason at all. So we just always have this noise. And with this noise, we fail to respect the people that we're in front of with our presence. And I think that in a time when relationships are so trivial and digital, the idea of giving somebody back the time to listen to them, to have empathy with them, to share life with them, that's one of the ways I'm being challenged right now is can I be present with the person that I'm in the room with enough to honor them and pour back into their life. The idea of being rewarded from God, I had a very strong misconception. I always grew up with a very skeptical view of the prosperity gospel. But on the other hand of that, when I was running a creative division for an agency, and God was prompting me to go out and start my own thing. And it was a very clear moment in time when I heard God say, if this company that I was currently in can be successful, how much more will I bless you if you do it my way? And that was all I needed for the confidence to go and create iSpeak and start iSpeak. And it's grown into what it's become today. However, when I thought God was speaking that to me, when He said that to me, how much more will I bless you? Yay, I'm gonna be rich. And that was a very financial thought in my mind. What I didn't realize is that the blessings that He was talking about were so much richer than money. The reward was so much bigger than anything that I could have in my paycheck or in my driveway. It was literally the ability for God to make me into and use my gifts for everything that He intended them to be. And the reward that comes from really kind of being in your sweet spot, using your gifts, your talents, your network, your resources, and creating those in such a way that shows glory and honor back to God through my life. And the biggest way that I'm honored to do that is by investing back in the team members, in the culture of iSpeak, and to who those people are becoming, to help position them into that same place where they find those rewards. And so there's an awesome trickling effect that because I've realized this, I'm now passionate about pouring it back into others. So the reward was maybe hopefully in my head financial, but it's shifted and grown over the years to where, oh, that's not what God, it was way more than that. I didn't even know. Money was my only concept for reward, and it's so much bigger, and there's things that are so much more important. The people that I'm pouring into and investing back into, it's not necessarily, there's not a goal, there's not a destination, it's a journey. So the idea is, how can you take one step forward from where you are today, and let that be the challenge. Let's not focus on losing 100 pounds. Let's get in the gym today, and let's do a little cardio, and let's make the most powerful decision we can make for dinner tonight. And we'll deal with tomorrow, but let's start taking some baby steps. One of the things that God's put in my heart for the people that I am lucky enough to pour back into is just the idea of fullness. I love John Eldridge's quote that the glory of God is man fully alive. And so how are we, what are we doing the things that we need to do to become the person we want to become? We've all got an ideal self in our head, and most of the time that just turns into guilt and shame that we're not that person. Instead, if we could take that energy, realize that God loves us where we are, and we have the responsibility to take that love, receive that love, and move closer to Him. And so reverse engineer that. What does that person look like? Well, what are the habits that you need to obtain to get you there? Let's break those down, and then let's create a plan with some of those habits so that we can just take the steps that we need. So 10 years from now, we are that ideal self, or God changes us along the way and shows us, no, this is the person I intended you to be. But you wouldn't have gotten there without those steps along the way. When people talk about time, talent, treasure, and what is it, and what's the biggest thing, and I know some people that it's really hard for them to have the courage and the trust to go big with the money thing. We did that from such an early time that it's honestly not hard for me, and it's not hard because I have a ton of money. It's just a discipline that I don't have a second thought about. So for me right now, the personal challenge is more on the time side. And when I have an opportunity to serve or give back, I've got this tension like, oh, I've got to protect my time. So it's back to that abundance thing. Like I've got a limited amount of time. And so I hold on to that instead of saying, God, it's your time and you can do this with this as you please. So it's not one or the other, but it's the old adage, it's the verse from Scripture that where your heart is, there your treasure will be also. It works vice versa. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also, but it also works in reverse. So if I want my heart to be somewhere else, I can start to put my treasure there, and my heart's gonna follow. The idea of how much is enough is a very personal conversation with God. I went and drove a Maserati with a friend of mine who is dying to buy this Maserati. And he asked me the same question because he loves Jesus, he gives generously. And I said, dude, ask yourself, I know you well enough to know that your heart's in the right place. You're not doing this out of a need for some identity posturing thing. You sincerely love cars. You make enough money that it's not irresponsible. And lastly, you're so generous with your time and giving and loving other people. If this is the one area that you want to spend that money, you're in life, you're in a position where you can do that. And that's awesome. Celebrate that. If you're gonna do that, that's amazing. Because that's your love and kind of a passion that you have for cars. And me, on the flip side of that, I can't see me putting my resources there, but it's not about that at all. It's a very, very personal conversation with God and a gut check of, is it a financially responsible decision? Is it an identity issue that I'm really struggling with here? Because most of them are. And then, am I generous? And is this going to inhibit my ability to seize an opportunity that God puts in my lap because I made an irresponsible decision? So the idea of how much is too much, there's so many variables, but a lot of times, can you do more? You can always do more. I don't think that God asks us to get into a situation where we're striving to give more and it's coming from an unhealthy place. I think that people can also get into a pride issue where they're going to give the most and they're going to be the biggest donor and the person that's there the most, or my identity is going to be the person that serves this community and I want my identity within this group. So there's actually dangers in going too much. So it's a very, very personal conversation with your living Father saying, what would you have for me today? How would you use my time? How would you use my resources? I see the generation coming after me as a much more generous generation. They're stuck because they are a very materialistic generation, but they are also very, very aware of social injustice and cause-driven society that we live in. They're drawn to cause. They're drawn to be a part of something bigger and more. And we're at the point now where we are disillusioned by the fancy cars and the fancy clothes. And this generation that's coming up, they will be more generous, both their time and their money. When they find that emotional connection to a cause that tugs at their heart, I believe they're going to have more open hands than my generation and the generations before me. And some of that, comes from all the way back to the Great Depression. I'm only 2 generations removed from that, and that has definite effect on my grandparents. My parents saw that, and so they went through that. You've got the generation in between my parents and myself, which kind of went the opposite direction, kind of the craze of the 80s. And so I think that that's run its course, and we're down to that just authentic love and passion for mankind and humanism and the planet and this idea of greater good. The challenge will be as everything becomes good and cause-driven, people see good and God really close to each other, and the difference will become the ability to see what's good and what's God, and to recognize where God's moving, to recognize where those good things actually impact the kingdom and impact the ability to have a conversation, to share your love for Christ and what the kingdom means to you. So I think we're going to be more generous in the future generations. I don't know if that's going to hurt or help the kingdom, because the line between good and God are going to get blurred. There's 2 big things that I would want my children to know and remember, and lessons that they could take and apply. The first is a story that happened in 2010. We were in a very, very rough season of the growth of our company, and it was really, really frustrating on me. I probably had some depression, a lot of uncertainty, and my coach, John Ritchie, said, "Benj, there's 3 things that you have to know, that you have to be able to answer." This came out of left field. I'm ready for some big business insight. And he says, "Who are you? Who is your audience? And why do you matter?" And it kind of crushed me. He said it's easier to answer in reverse, so I started to choose my audience. And I knew, didn't want to give the church answer there, but it was my authentic answer. And I said, I want Jesus, I want God to be my only audience and to truly live for Him. I said, okay. And he said, why do you matter? And immediately I broke, just bawled, because at that moment I had nothing. I didn't have an answer to that question of why I mattered. And he said, Benj, you're a marketing guy. How much is something worth? And I said, again, just breaking to another level, because I knew where he went at that point. And I said, how much someone is willing to pay for it. And he said, and how much was your Heavenly Father willing to pay for you? And man, if we could keep that perspective on our value and on our identity as men, as women, as children of God, that's life-changing. That's living in the abundance of our Father in a resurrected life and the ability to love and influence other people. And the third question, who are you? I think that's a very personal, like lots of different answers, but I ended up saying that I am the redeemed child of the living God, and that summed it all up. The second big thing that I would want to share with you is I was always big as a company, as a brand. We talk about a mission statement and how important that is for alignment, for focus, for purpose, to make sure you stay on target. And so I had my mission statement, and I used my skills and my talents and my loves, and figured out where I was best positioned, and that's my mission statement. And then recently I read Philippians 3:10, which is Paul writing, and he says, that I may know him in the power of his resurrection, and I may share in his sufferings, becoming like him in his death, that by any means possible I may attain the resurrection from the dead. again, kind of a broken moment of, oh my goodness, my mission statement is so all about me. And if my mission statement was to be present, to be focused on a relationship, a two-way conversation where not only I share with God, but I'm able to hear his voice and hear the pains and the sorrows and the struggles that he feels for the lost and the broken. That's a game changer. And that's the difference between being a fan of Christ and a follower of Christ. And I want that. I want that as my mission. And I want you to have that as your mission.